is back with another recap episode. I'm your host, Chris Swanepoel, and with me today, as always, is my co-host, Riley. And Riley, you've got a nice blinging new buff there with you.
It is a very beautiful Osandili buff. Thank you very much to LaRue Bota for sending that out to both of us. And what an episode. These twists just keep on coming in thick and fast. Another unpredictable tribal council and some crazy gameplay this episode. It's just, this season is really delivering on all levels.
100%. We've got live viewers coming in here. Logan, thank you very much for jumping in on the live. We've seen your comments after the episodes. I don't know if you've actually had us on a live, but it's great to have you here on the live and being able to do it at a time that suits you in Canada as well. What an episode, Riley. You know, Santoni has been such a massive character this season. Like, I would go as far as to say she's probably number one on the list of players that would be asked to come back and play in Survivor South Africa's first All-Star season. And she's had such a massive ride throughout the season, being an underdog, being a person who's always been on the outs, having to flip-flop in between alliances as she continued through the game. You know, we lose an absolute queen, an absolute legend of the game here. How do you feel about losing Santoni so close to the end here?
I was devastated because we saw a glimmer of hope for Santoni after Anela really blew up his game. So I was really hoping and hanging on with bated breath that hopefully Santoni will get through, but it's really sad to see her go. She's fought so hard throughout. And I did think, she played a great game, maybe a little bit of an aggressive game, but certainly if she got to the end, she could have done very well. So really sad seeing her go out, but we've still got hope in Chappies as the underdog. Not that I'm cheering against Tyson and Karan at this point, but they've dominated for so long that it's really nice to see things shaken up a little bit. And I love that unpredictability of Survivor. And this season, with all the advantages, has really delivered on that level.
Yeah, Tyson and Karan is your boys. They're the people that you've got in your camp coming into the finale here. And I've got some very hot takes and some theories in regards to how I think the end game is going to play out here. But I tell you what, there's a real risk, Riley, in having your mind made up about who the players are that you would like to return for an All-Star season before a season is played out. I kind of alluded to that in our previous recap where there are certain players that are just week in and week out delivering at the moment and that are making it very hard for me to ignore them when it comes to our off-season content where we're going to be talking about who do we think should come back and play this game again. And for me, one of those players is Karan. Like, I reckon Karan is playing the best game this season. I will put that out there. I reckon strategically, socially, the way he's maneuvered throughout this game is top tier level Survivor play, and I still believe Karan's not going to make the finale because I believe if he makes the finale, he wins. And I don't think he wins this season. I think it's either Tyson or Chappie. So I think Karan is going to get sniped before the end here. But I really appreciate the fact that, throughout this game, he's done a very similar thing to Santoni. Santoni and Chappies both this episode think that Karan is on their side. They think that they can work with him. So he's playing a game where even though he's close to Tyson and we see it as viewers on the TV show, they're not picking up on the fact that Karan is so tied to Tyson. And he just seems to be in with everybody.
Yeah, that's right. He's played a great social game so far. And we did see him, being flexible in his plans with the likes of Vanessa in the past. So certainly not to be so tied down to that relationship with Tyson and to have that appearance to the others is a great thing for him because appearances are deceiving in the game of Survivor. You really want to, downplay your threat level. And Karan's done a great job of that. But I think, we might start to see that maybe people are catching on to him. And unfortunately, I hope he survives all the way because ever since Dino went out, I think Kieran's probably been my boy. And he's very similar to my other favorite Survivor South Africa castaway, Mike Venter, in a couple of ways, in that he's young and very strategically driven. But yeah, I hope he does well, but it's going to be very interesting to see the end game now that we're down to 5 players.
Harry Wiggins, previous Survivor South Africa alum, is in the chat saying he woke up early to listen to this and agrees that Santoni is a Survivor unicorn and his top choice for his Survivor South Africa All-Star season. Fully agree with you there, Harry. Just putting it out there, if it's early or morning, you probably don't want to jump on one of these lives, but if you do want to get into it, let us know in the chat. We'd be happy to send you the link if you want to jump in and say a couple of words here in the episode as well. More than welcome to jump on because we don't have a special guest this week. Also, Jenny here is saying Santoni a lock for All Stars. Hope she wins. Fan favorite. I think that Santoni is a very high likelihood for fan favorite. It's going to be between her and Chappies.
Yeah, I'd maybe throw out Amy there as well as someone that was screwed over, or even Renier. But yeah, it seems like Chappies and Santoni have really been the underdogs all season. definitely two of the biggest characters. And Santini, I mean, at least from my point of view, she's played a great game, been a very entertaining character right from the get-go. And I'm sure that reflects across, the fans of Survivor South Africa as well.
Interesting take here from Marcus saying that Tyson has had too much negativity. You wouldn't think that the editors would have that many negativity for a potential winner, and we'll get into that pretty soon. And Marcus has got a take where he believes that Chappies or Karan is winning this. Anything's possible with Survivor South Africa editing, and that's what we love about the show. And if Karan goes and he wins the show, it would probably be more shocking and surprising to me that I've missed it the whole season, that I haven't been able to pick up on the edit that he's going to be the person to win it. I still feel like he gets taken out early. I think that Chappies and Tyson, and I could be so wrong, and it's always fun to be wrong, but I still feel like it's one of those two guys that are going to take it here in the end. But let's talk about the early stages of this episode here, because we get Tyson and Chappies going at it a little bit at camp here after the episode. Obviously, it was a pretty heated episode, the previous episode, with them going back and forth and Warada ultimately getting voted out. But Tyson swearing at Chappies in the tribal council, and then Chappies saying that, he's let this go on for way too long and he's not going to take abuse, especially from Tyson going forward. And then he said that Tyson needs to learn how to speak to people. He's being too aggressive. So it's pretty heated moments here. But, Tyson again swears at him here, and I've seen the online social media. A lot of people are going very hard at Tyson and Karan because of everything that's happened. I don't know why Karan's being associated with it. Maybe because he's close friends with Tyson. But Karan does seem like he controls his emotions a little bit better than Tyson. What is your take on this? For me, I feel like I still think Tyson is a good guy. I still think Karan is a good guy. I just think that when you're playing a game for R1 million and it's so close to the end now, emotions boil over. You don't have a lot of food. Like, things that will not annoy you in your everyday life is annoying you. And I feel like we're just seeing, Tyson is he definitely is becoming more and more angry as he gets to the end of the game, and more emotion is coming out of him. And maybe it's a case of him having just held that back for 30 plus days. And now suddenly he just can't hold it back anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyson really has, hid behind almost the facade of the game he's playing so far this season. He's played a very game body, strategic-driven game at this point. So it was odd, obviously, to see him really let it all out and, have that big debate with Chappies at camp. Obviously, a lot of those grievances coming from the previous tribal council, where Chappies and Tyson and Wider as well were really, really going at it. So I think a lot of that was the aftermath there. To that end, though, it reminded me a lot of Jark and Steffi from the previous season. And again, with that instance, I think a lot of it was, just frustration of the underdog slipping away yet again. And I think you can carry that across to this episode as well. Chappie's obviously time and time again coming up with advantages or individual immunity necklaces to fight his way off the bottom and sniping off someone from Tyson's alliance. Very similar to Steffi not having the control of the vote there when Jark didn't play the idol. So I think a very similar point of view there. Tyson wanting to control the rest of the tribe, and Chappie's almost in response hitting back and saying he's playing his own game and he's really not going to take any crap from anyone at this point.
100%. Now, Chappie's, I said it before and I'm going to say it again. I am super impressed by his ability to remain calm and not to, and again, I forgive Tyson for the way he was feeling, and I don't know what was happening in the camp. I just think that sometimes emotions boil over, and then when you come to watch Survivor South Africa, I think people are now starting to realize after 2 seasons in a row where things got pretty heated with Jark Burger in the previous season as well, as that in South Africa, there's like I've said it before, it's culturally a thing where everybody over there are fighters and they fight for their little patch of green in the world. There's a lot of difficulty and tough realities with living in South Africa that makes people very hardened in life there. So it's definitely a cultural thing where if you put them in a game like Survivor where they have to go up against each other and they've got their backs against the wall, people are going to get really emotional. They're going to say certain things in the heat of the moment. And that's happening here between Chappies and Tyson. But I do still respect Chappies for not letting that get to him and not swearing back at Tyson and remaining calm and having a level head. And, obviously, like he goes into this challenge here saying to Nico that, he's someone that still feels it. He's still human, and he feels a bit battered and bruised after the previous tribal council and with what's happened at camp. But if they give him a day, he'll be back. But Nico says, you're not going to get a day. You're going to have to turn up right now, and you're going to have to do this challenge. And this challenge here is quite a classic Survivor challenge, with them standing on a balance beam. And they've got that pole out there with the idol on top of it, or the thing that they've got to balance. And then the last person standing on it, that's going to be the person who's going to ultimately win this. And the stakes are that much higher when you see your loved one after 30 plus days of not seeing your loved one. Let's remember, these guys have played the show in a time where there was a pandemic going out there, not to oversell it, but there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going on outside of the game. You're not in touch with your loved ones. I think it hit a lot of these people a lot harder seeing their loved ones. And now they have to compete in front of their loved ones for what they think will be the time that they'll get to go and spend with those loved ones. I love this kind of challenge where you have to, sort of compete in front of them. You see what's at stake right in front of you, and it's time with your loved ones. And that's kind of going to be the thing that's going to have to drive you here towards a challenge win.
Yeah, and particularly given South Africa has been so hard hit from COVID. I mean, it really does just drive home the ability to have family there. I honestly wasn't thinking we'd have a family visit in this season, just because of the bubble and the season they wanted to create without having any outside influence, not wanting to obviously create COVID panic in camp. But really great to see that, and obviously for Chappies as well, to see his wife come in with his baby in the oven as well. So it's really nice to see that level of emotion. Tyson as well, really laying it all out there to his best mate coming out as well. It's always great seeing these family visits happen. I always choke up every time. I don't like to admit it, but Survivor family visits are my one weakness. And when Chappies and his wife embraced, it was just not so much waterworks, but I was getting a little bit emotional, tugging on the heartstrings there.
I started, it always gets me when you see these larger than life characters, the Chappies, the Tony Vlachos, the people that they just, that positive energy in general, and they're just happy people playing a game, enjoying the game for what it's worth. And then you see this happy person break down and start crying. Like, Chappie started tearing up before he even saw his wife coming out, because he knew who was coming. And it's quite interesting, because I had a theory that Chappies will come into the final tribal council and talk about the fact that his wife is pregnant, and maybe use that as a little bit of a thing that will gather him some votes, get him some votes in the final if he does make it. But we find out here that a lot of people knew that his wife is pregnant, because I believe somebody, I don't know if it was Santoni or Nicole, somebody said, hey, Ruben Lee is here as well. And Ruben Lee being the name of their child, obviously they know that she's pregnant. She came onto the show being pregnant as well. What a beautiful moment for Chappies and his wife, Natalia, there together as well. And then obviously we see all of the other great, interactions with people and their family members, like Anilla, this big, bulky, coach rugby male alpha type of guy, just breaking down because his brother's out there, and you get people like Nicole seeing her brother. Her brother looks like an absolute unit, massive giant of a guy coming out there. I spoke to Santoni in the exit interview, and I said, how likely would it be that, you'd want to play a blood versus water season with your sister? And apparently his sister's an even bigger fan than she is of Survivors. So this is the kind of stuff that I love. I'm similar to you. I don't normally cry on these things, but I did get a bit emotional because I've got family who lives in South Africa that I haven't seen for the last 2.5 years. Because of the pandemic, obviously I can't travel back and go and visit them. So I can feel a little bit, at least I still got communication with them through phone calls and video chats and things like that. But I know what South Africa has been through, and I know the uncertainty that they must have felt being out there, not knowing that their loved ones are close to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always very hard. And yeah, as you say, in this time where people, even, a couple cities away, a couple of hours away, people haven't been able to interact with their family. But obviously, being on the island for over 30 days now and having that interaction finally with your loved ones, it really does bring it close to home. And it's great to see that Chappies really brings his guard down here. And, it really, whenever the family visit comes around, everything is put on hold almost. And it really slows down the game a little bit and shows what people are playing for, which I think is the beauty of it. Us getting to know these characters over so many days, and then see those outside relationships come into the game and how they impact them as well, and how they drive them going forward.
100%. It's actually not to talk too much about the Australian Survivor Show, but it's one of the things I had a bit of a knock on them for having the letters 6 days into the season. They already get letters from home, and I'm like, I don't even know 80% of the cast yet. I don't feel the same emotion from people getting letters that early on. So I like it when it's delayed a little bit, and especially like you said, I didn't know if we were going to see them there this season because of all the difficulties that were out there. I don't even know if we're going to see family members for the Australian season this year if they're going to be bringing that in. But overall, Chappies does end up winning this challenge, and Nico tells him that you didn't win what you think you won. You actually won a different advantage, which is going to be you now get to choose which two people do you want to go up against in the immunity challenge. So what a clutch win for him to pull this one through, because if he lost this one, he could have effectively been cut out from any opportunity of winning an immunity challenge. But now he gets the ability to choose who he wants to go up against. And obviously it's a no-brainer he's going to choose Santini because she's his closest ally in the game. Plus, he would think that he could beat her. And then Anella being the other person. And I will admit, I haven't taken too much notice of Anella's challenge performances in the game so far. But, Chappies brings it up that those two statistically are the two people that he believes would be the easiest to beat. Did you like this twist? Because we've been criticizing twists that the Australian Survivor Show sometimes throws in there. And again, this kind of messes a little bit with the core of the game, only having 3 people potentially here that can compete for immunity challenge, and it kind of eliminates half of the people that are still in the game.
Yeah, I like the twist, but I did have my tinfoil hat on because, it really happened after the challenge. After Chappies won the challenge, they announced the twist, which made me a little bit skeptical of it. But I'm glad it was there, though. Santini and Anella going against Chappies in the immunity challenge. I was thinking it would be Santini and Nicole, but the choice of Anella makes sense given Nicole is really strong in those balancing challenges, and we've seen her perform quite well in the past, winning that other reward challenge in the Tied Destinies as well, from memory. So yeah, definitely a great decision for Chappies to make, and a massive advantage for him. Obviously, already a challenge beast, and to eliminate Tyson and Kiran and Nicole from competing in the immunity challenge, it gives him just those much better odds. And really nice to see everyone going all together back to camp and seeing all 6 castaways and their families interact.
100%. Now, Marcus here says that he loved the twist that they used the loved ones to visit to allow them to go back to camp, and then Karan finds the idol, which we will talk about in a second here. Devin Bates, who I've never seen in the live chat before. Devin, welcome to the live show, and let me know if I've missed you. I don't recognize your name, but we love having new people come on here and talk to us about the game. He says that he wouldn't count out Tyson as a potential winner just yet. Great minds think alike, Devin. I'm on your wavelength when it comes to that. And he also says that he's really been enjoying this season. And let us know, Devin, what it is that you have enjoyed about the season, and let us know where you're watching from. Are you from the US, Canada, Australia, South Africa? We get viewers from all around the world that are joining us on the podcast and also watching this great season of Survivor South Africa. Now, this is quite an interesting thing because, they get to go back with all of the loved ones that came to visit them on the show, which I think is a great thing. If you're going to take the risk in a pandemic world to go into the bubble, you probably had to go through quarantine for 2 weeks prior to being able to go there. So their loved ones would have been in some sort of a quarantine, which we'll definitely ask, I guess, Leroux Botha about when we get him on the show after the season. You want to make it worth people's while for going out there, being in quarantine, going into the bubble. And I like the fact that they kind of gave everybody the opportunity to have their loved ones there and get this great reward of creating some burgers, getting some burgers there for them. And then very smartly, Karan, being a fan of the show, realizes that there's probably going to be an idol somewhere. And it's really funny because he basically uses a loved one from a different competitor in the game. And obviously, Nicole's brother, not being survivor hardened, sort of deer in headlights, goes and helps him to go and find an idol that potentially could have been Nicole's downfall in the game here. So really funny scenes overall. And we learn about the League of Shadows, which we had absolutely no idea existed up until this point in the game.
Yeah, League of Shadows, a great alliance starting to form there between Anella, Karan, and Tyson, and we will see that sort of erode toward the end of the episode. But really funny seeing Nicole's brother Peter, come and help give Karan a boost to get him the idol. I'd say, yeah, a little bit of niceties given they were in the same alliance, but also a little bit of naivety, I'd say, as well. And Nicole, not so much pissed off, but a little bit annoyed that that wasn't her that got the idol. But in the end, Karan, a really great. A really savvy player to notice, in the previous reward challenges that the idols have been hidden somewhere around the tribal sign, around the sponsor sign rather. And yeah, looked behind the outsurance sign, and there it was, a package that he ended up using in this episode as well, because his name would ultimately come on the chopping block.
100%. So we've got here in the chat, Dolores, welcome back to the live stream. I have seen you in some of the chats. I don't remember if it's the challenge or just Survivor, but I definitely have seen you. And you're happy to catch us because we normally do our recaps with a guest from South Africa. Like we like to get the previous players on the show, and we will have a couple of previous players on. Jark Berger was supposed to be on this stream, but sadly he had some family matters coming up on the same weekend and couldn't sort of reschedule it. So we'll see him on a different weekend on the show. He's quite keen to talk to us about this season, but because of that, sometimes the time that we do this, I think, doesn't overlap so well with the US audience. And we know we've got a lot of people here from the US that are watching us as well, and we really love sharing International Survivor with people from the US. So Devin also from the US as well, and Dolores saying loving the season, but guys, this last episode I was disappointed in Tyson, and he is being a mean person in her opinion. Enjoying the edit, gameplay, and cast this season. So to address that with you, Dolores, I understand where you're coming from, and I think that a lot of people have been very low on Tyson because of the fact that he did get a bit personal. There was a lot of swearing involved and things like that. And I don't know if you caught the beginning part of the show, and I'm not condoning any of this behavior at all. Like, I don't condone going out there and swearing and getting violent on a show such as Survivor. But I do think that for us as fans, it's sometimes hard to realize what these guys go through, and just the lack of food, getting so close to the money, the social situation in South Africa being one where people fight day to day just to live. And you would hear Santoni talking about it in the exit interview. When that comes out tomorrow, she talks about the fact that there's a lot of people in South Africa that struggle, and the way that they live in South Africa is like living in Survivor. She put herself in that situation to feel like what it would feel like not to have a roof over your head, what it would feel like not to have food. South Africa's got unemployment records as high as 40% of the country not having a job. There's some real big social issues in that country, and people really, their everyday life is a fight. So if you put people with that kind of mindset in a game such as Survivor, I feel like it just gets amplified. And I'm not trying to make excuses for anyone here, but I'm just thinking that we have to think wider than just the game. And I can't wait to have Tyson on the show so he can talk to it himself. And what was the things that really got him this upset about Chappies? Because it seems like it's not just something that happened this episode. It seems like it's something that's been coming along for quite a long time. And I do take my hat off for Chappies for remaining calm and not meeting Tyson at that level, because I think it could have turned out to be maybe a little bit nasty if we had both people go at that level at each other. And we wouldn't want things to get physical out on the island, right, Riley?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a little bit hard to look at the edit in that way. We did obviously get a lot of negative content from Tyson this episode, which, as Marcus mentioned earlier, it's kind of knocked back my opinion of him a little bit in terms of him being a potential winner. I may be looking towards Chappies and Kiran as being the winner here just based on this episode, but you never really know. Crazier things have happened in Survivor South Africa. And obviously, being on the island for 30 days with so little food, especially when Chappies is stealing it all and stashing all that rice for himself, these tensions come to a bubbling point, and in the end, it all has to be thrashed out. It's just the game. I mean, obviously, opposing alliances, Tyson losing one of his closest allies as well, and a lot of that spilling over from tribal council. It's ugly to see, but I think that's just the nature of what happens on the island. It's a very tense situation.
100%. And we get the opportunity here that Chappies goes up against Anela and Santoni in the immunity challenge. Was there ever any chance that anybody but Chappies was going to win this immunity challenge?
Anela was very close, but as we saw straight away, Chappies just on the grappling hook, first go, brought it in. Anela really lagged behind a little bit, but on the table maze, Anela proved to be quite good, but it seemed very close towards the end there, and we saw both of them in the center circle. I don't know if that was edited in or not, but certainly very close. But Chappies, in the end, I mean, he made the right choice to bring Santoni and Smash with him to the immunity challenge because it paid off for him and keeps him alive for another vote. Great to see Chappies remaining in the game. I had a smile on my face after it because Chappies is really becoming the underdog here. I'm starting to become more and more of a fan of him as the season goes along. So it's really great to see that he's still fighting to remain in the game and overcoming the odds, given that everyone has been against him basically since Pinty went home. There's been so much resistance to him all season long that to see him keep getting wins, now his third immunity challenge win, it's great to see.
And it's been confusing because for us as viewers watching Chappies, and I've been saying it the whole season, I feel like when I watch the show, I feel like I'm watching Chappies' story and I'm watching Santoni's story and I'm watching Tyson's story play out. Those are like the three people that, and at one point, Ranid had a bit of an edit there as well, but those are kind of the people. But Chappies has always been the person where, even though there's so much negativity around him and other people not getting along with him and calling him the big bad, they want to get him out as soon as the merge happens. And, Chappies is this, there was things thrown around about him being part of the misogynist alliance and having the boys around him, the boys club and all that kind of stuff. The edit has gone out of its way every single time to show us when he's done something nice, like, helping Santoni out of the water, helping her from not drowning and Anella from not drowning, him being polite to people. I think the only real negative thing probably that we've seen from Chappies really was when he spoke to Warada about the reward that he got, and that he got to hear from his family back at home, from his wife back at home, where I think he came out of a place of goodness, but it kind of showed I think there's times that Chappies are socially maybe not so aware how he comes across. And even if he's doing it from a good place, it's from a good place within his heart. It's being perceived or taken the wrong way by people around him. So the edit has definitely protected him in a lot of ways, because if he was really this bad guy, they could have buried him. They could have we know how these shows work. They could have not shown us any of the good stuff that he's done throughout the whole season. So it's one of two things. It's either he's winning the show or they're building him up to come back as an all-star because they just love Chappies as a whole and they would love to see him play the game again. But Chappies, when he meets his wife here in this episode, when she comes and she's in his arms, he says that he never wants to be away from her this long ever again. So does that mean Chappies is not coming back? I was a bit gutted when I hear that.
We happen all the time. Everyone goes off the island and says, I never want to do it again. But, sometimes we see him return. I know in the US at least, the likes of Boston, Robin, Parvati, and Sandra said they never return, but they obviously came back in season 40 Winners at War. So you never really know, obviously. And Chappies is a very delicate time of his life, obviously, with a baby on the way. Hopefully we see him back in the end, or hopefully he wins the season. Either way, I'm loving the Chappies content we're getting. And I started off the season a little bit skeptical of him, mainly because he was your first pick in the draft, Chris. But as the season's gone on, he's just been such a strong challenge player. He's been playing from the bottom, fighting every episode, trying to create these contingency plans and blindside the majority. And, this episode with him winning the immunity challenge, the momentum's just going his way. And it's really a shame that Kiran had to find that idol, because if Santoni got that in her hands, it really would have been all hell going on at Tribal Council. And we could have really seen a major turn point in the game.
100%. Now, a couple of things here that I just want to catch up on in the live feeds. Logan says that I think the immunity challenge was very even from the start for each contestant. Everybody had a chance to win. I do think it was pretty even. I do think Anella lost it in the beginning part. And it's quite funny seeing someone like Anella, who we know is an athlete, he's a coach in rugby. He's got a skill set, but clearly throwing a grappling hook is not one of them. He really struggled with that grappling hook in the beginning, and it might have been over editing, showing him miss the same thing more than once. They sometimes do things like that. And Logan kind of stole my thunder here because maybe it's because I want Chappies to win. He's definitely one of my favorites. I wouldn't be angry at anybody else winning the show. I'm actually quite content with whoever's left in the game right now. But Chappies has been very much a favorite of mine throughout the season. And just because I'd love to have my first guide pick win, I can't claim the preseason winner pick because Anessa was that preseason winner pick. But obviously I thought of him pretty highly to choose him as my first guy. And then, I kind of feel like he's, like Logan says here, he says he thinks that Chappies is going to be the fourth boot edit, the underdog who loses the last challenge and gets unanimously voted out before the final three. And I've got this theory as well, Riley. I think, and we'll get into what happens at the end and everything. We'll go back to the episode. But I think our next boot is Kiran, because I think if Kiran makes the final, he wins. I really, really think he's got all of the respect from everybody in Ponderosa. Every time we see Ponderosa, people speak really highly of his game. And if you look at Tyson and Kiran next to each other, Tyson, to me, doesn't have the social game that Kiran has. Kiran's got the social game. Kiran's got the strategy. Tyson has got some of the strategy with Kiran, but he doesn't have the social part. So I feel like what I think is going to happen is my prediction. I'm putting it out there. Is I think next episode, Chappies somehow gets Nicole and Anella to work with him. They vote out Kiran. Kiran's gone. Next episode, everybody knows that if Chappies does not win immunity, he has to go because he's just won too many immunities here at the end. They don't want to sit next to him, or maybe there's some sort of loyalty where people think that Tyson will be perceived differently. But I think my predictions is that Anela, Nicole, and Tyson will be the final three. And my prediction is Tyson is winning this season.
Very interesting. But no, we did see a little bit of that in the preview for the next episode with Chappies sort of introducing himself to Nicole. So to see how that relationship forms in this next episode will be interesting, especially after we saw a lot of strategy talk between the two in this episode to really try and get that move to get rid of Kiran or Tyson out of the game with Nicole's fire idol in her possession. And sort of an odd strategy discussion there, because Anela was really coming at it hard, wanting to claim his own idea. And when Santini made a very right suggestion, might I add, suggesting they should split the votes 2-2 just in case Kiran plays his idol on himself. And in that instance, Nicole would have 2 votes and Tyson would have 1 vote against him. It was probably the right decision for Santini to make, but Anela was really frustrated with Santini taking control for that move.
No, 100%. And let's talk through that. One of the things that really surprised me was the fact that Nicole was openly sharing the fact that she had the fire idol with Karan and Tyson in camp, which I didn't realize how close Nicole became to Karan and Tyson, but clearly she thought she was in the inner circle there with Anela, and Anela gave her a certain amount of security with those two that she was happy to work with them as the League of Shadows, like they called themselves. But Karan and Tyson here, they very smartly, this is a great move by them to want to do this. They realize that Santini is not the threat. The threat is Nicole, because if Chappies doesn't win an immunity, Nicole is someone that's been proven to be pretty good in these challenges, and she's also someone that has proven not to give up. She didn't sit out for food against Chappies earlier in the season when she could have. She still went on to challenge him, and she's someone that could be a threat here towards the end, but they clearly miscalculated the loyalty that Anela does have towards Nicole. And Anela, quite rightfully here, I felt like Anela did a lot of things correctly. He read that him betraying Nicole at this point would probably be seen as a negative thing by the jury, and he wouldn't get the respect because it wouldn't even be his move at the end of the game if he did. So I think from Anela's point of view, to go to Chappies and say, hey, I want to flip the vote on Karan, I want to take Karan out, brilliant move, makes sense, take control of the vote. Don't let Karan and Tyson build any more of a resume than they already have in this game at this point, because they've controlled most of the post-merge section of the game. Brilliant move. Then goes and sits down, like you said, with Chappies and with Santini, and both Chappies and Santini are thinking through this, and Santini is saying, what are you guys doing? Like, you don't want to split the vote 2-2-2, which basically means that Nicole's going to be a threat and she wants to play the fire idol to go and make fire against someone. Like, what's the logic in that, And Anela, like you said, quite rightfully, absolutely blows up his game by going back to Karan, and Karan is gobsmacked. And he's like, why would you come back to me and tell me that you were going to target me in the spot? And I have to be okay with it. And I think that Karan at this point does not want to work with Anela. Like we saw in the preview, he said, I need to get Anela out next. I don't want him to get to the finale. But I think Anela is the perfect person to take to the finale at this point. I think Anela is the perfect GOAT. If he does get a not greatest of all time, GOAT being led to the slaughter, if Anela makes the finale after this blunder that he made in the game here, I think it's done. In retrospect, if he followed through with his plan, I think he could have won the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It would have been a great move to make. Obviously, it still would have forced the fire battle between Nicole and Tyson, and they would have had to fight it out. I would hope that Nicole won the show, really just to upset things a lot, even though Tyson is on my draft team. But, it was a brilliant plan by Anela, but him just getting too carried away, wanting to control the game. And in the end, the power just got to his head. He told Kiran, thinking that he was doing the right thing and telling Karan that, his name was on the chopping block. He's got to save himself now. He's going to flip back to that side. Flip-flopping so many times in the same episode is not a good idea. It reminded me a little bit of how Jason Brookstein went out in the first episode. Jason really wanted to switch the vote towards I think it was Renier. I forget now. A long time ago. This season's been going on for ages, and so much has been going on. But Jason just wanted to control the vote. A similar instance here with Smash, really wanted to change the way things were, flipping back to his original alliance despite betraying them and saying, well, look, this was the plan. Now I'm going back with you guys. Let's try and get someone out. Really just very wish-washy, which isn't what you want to be in Survivor. You want to be set on your plans. And in all honesty, I wouldn't want to be taking the heat 100% for the plan. If it meant that the target was put on me in the next episode, I can claim that at Final Tribal Council. You don't have to claim it now. You can claim it later and say it was originally your plan, and you just sort of made it a little bit more foolproof. So I think Anella was just getting in his head a little bit, and ultimately all unraveled for him.
Has no one watched Christy Bennett's season in the first Australian Survivor, claiming so many of the plans and directions at the end? Like, you could still win at the end by having a really compelling case to the jury. You have to sell yourself at the end when you get there, and it's all in perspective. It's all perception management at the end when you get there. So I agree with you. Golden opportunity missed here by Anella. I think he knows that as well. I'm pretty sure he knows that. I saw a tweet afterwards where he kind of pretty much alluded to the fact that it's not going to turn out well for him at the end here. He knows where he stuffed up. And listen, a lot of things happens. And I think it was a pride thing. I think it was a thing that he wanted to control the vote. He was overly confident Karan would not play the idol on himself. He wanted to say, I fully controlled this vote from beginning to end. No one else had any hand in what was happening. And he had a lot of friends in Zumba. On that, a lot of his alliance is sitting in Zumba. So if he made the final and he took out who I think has been the best player in the game up until this point, that would have been a massive trophy that he would have had if he went into the finale. And he probably, I think, wins this game. And I think if we look at Anella's game and we point back to a specific place where he lost this season, sadly, it would be this move. And Survivor is an unforgiving game. Like, he could have done everything right in his game up until this point, just to make the wrong move at the wrong time that could cost you the game at the end. And I'm sure it's going to haunt him for a long time in the future. Now, Logan also brings up a great point here about Karan, and he said that Karan also made Smash lose all credibility to the jury after the fact when they were in the jury. And Karan really goes hard on him here, sort of talking about the fact that Anella was wishy-washy, flopping back and forth, wanting to make this move because he's admitted to Karan that he doesn't have a CV, so discrediting him, saying that even Anella doesn't think he can win this game, and he needed this move, and he didn't make this move. So he goes hard against them here. But what I found really interesting, and I love Santini, but doesn't mean I can't criticize certain things that she does in the game. And Santini does have the ability, or the thing that she sometimes does, where she makes other people's issues her issue. And she comes in and she finds a way to say, but Karan, you're doing the same thing to me. You've also, lied to me sometimes, or try to go against me and backstab me at certain points in the game. And Karan turns it back on her masterfully and says, well, you can't claim that if you did that to me first. You betrayed me first, and he kind of shows a little bit of the hypocrisy in her argument here at this stage in the game. And I think that this kind of shows us that if Karan is to make the finale, he is going to blow everybody out of the water. I think he's a good public speaker. I think strategy-wise, he's done a lot. But again, the thing that makes me fear for Karan is not the edit, because I don't have a short-term memory. It's not the edit in the last 3 or 4 episodes. It's the edit prior to that. Why did we not see more of Karan dominating this game from the start? We always got Tyson's point of view. Tyson was the one that we thought was pointing a lot of the direction out and doing the confessionals in the beginning. They're forced to show Karan at the moment because there's not that many players left in the game anymore. So by proxy, we're going to see more of his game. But that's why I'm still nervous about a Karan win. I think Karan is not making the finale. I would love to be wrong. I think he's a top-tier player, and he's one of those guys that have snuck into that spot for me in a top 5 position of players that I would love to see come back and play the game. I don't know who that knocks out of it for me, and that's why I said it's so risky to early on in the season claim, these people I'd love to see again, because people can surprise you. The game's not over yet. You shouldn't be making those claims before the season is done.
Yeah, and that's right. I think with Karan making that big speech at Tribal Council, it was almost catch-22. Yes, it exposed Anella, played down his game, and really eliminated him as a threat in the game, and labelled him almost as a goat that can be taken to the end. But by the same token, it also exposed his game as well. It showed to the jury that he was really controlling the game, but also it showed to the rest of the players that, hey, this is the guy we should be targeting. He's at the center of every conversation. He knows exactly what's going on. Maybe he's the one that we need to get rid of next. And I think by Kiran being the brains of this alliance of Kiran and Tyson, and that's not to discount Tyson. Tyson has had just as much involvement in it, but I think Kiran has been seen as the person that's driving the vote, although I think that Tyson has had just as much contribution in making those decisions. But I think people will start to recognize, yeah, Karan is the man that's running the show right now. We need to get rid of him at the next given opportunity. People are almost discounting Chappies because they recognize that he's almost blown up his own game and that no one respects him. Little do they know, if Chappies gets to the end, he's probably going to win because he's had so much counted against him that it almost counts for him at the final tribal council, being that underdog the whole way. But Kiran has been, really emerging as this massive threat at this point that it's almost becoming paramount now to get rid of him. And I got to give credit to Chappies as well for telling Santani to sort of simmer down, step away from the argument, calm down, let Kiran blow his own game up because you don't want to be, blowing too much smoke into your own face because otherwise that's going to put a target on yourself. Just calm down, let things go. We'll vote how we vote and see how things happen. So I really think Chappies has great control of the game and figuring out, how people are being perceived on the jury and kind of playing that psychic role to Santani and telling her, or almost the angel or devil on her shoulder, telling her to be quiet, lay low, and just let Kiran blow up his own game.
Yeah, he's got great emotional control of his game, and like some of the best winners and players of this game, they possess that quality. Even though he's this crazy manic person that will go out and steal food and jump into what he calls a spy shack, and do all these crazy theoretical or theatrical things on the show. He does know when to tone it down as well, and he's a true performer, which is why we've enjoyed it. And we will go into the power rankings in the end, and we'll talk about why we think and how we think these remaining 5 players, how they could still win the game from here. But I do want to move on to the vote. So the vote ended up being that Santani gets 3 votes here, and then Tyson gets 2 votes, but Nicole blows up the plan by playing the fire idol. And I think it's a great move by Nicole. I think, like Santani's sister said, if you've got an idol, it's better to be safe than sorry. And this was the last time she could play it. So, obviously with Kiran blowing up Anella's game there in Tribal Council, it must have made Nicole really nervous because she wasn't even aware. Like, I don't think Anella went to Nicole to say, I'm turning back against you guys and I'm going to go back and vote with the boys. So there's too much uncertainty at that point, and if you don't know what's going on, play the idol. But it leads into a pretty good fire making challenge. There was a bit of disappointment from my end in regards to the fact that the fire station, that rope looked like it was a lot closer to the bottom than what you normally see in the US seasons. Like, I feel like you need to get a bit of a higher flame in the US seasons to actually win the fire challenge. So that looked a little bit like it was a bit easier. And then the second thing is, I feel like there was way too much husk because, Santani actually gets the technique right. She gets the fire going with the husk. She tries to build a proper fire with the sticks. And Tyson doesn't even attempt to do it with the sticks because in Africa, in general, it's like, I guess in the wild coast it wasn't that dry, but they probably could have gotten really dry supplies from Africa. And the wood there in general, when you do a barbecue in South Africa, the wood's a different type of dryness, similar to like what you get in the outback as well, compared to like what you probably would get out on an island such as Samoa. You've got the humidity to deal with, which messes around with the fire and things like that. He basically just powers through the whole thing and just uses husk. Didn't even try to build a fire, and he ends up winning it. But what a dramatic contest. I mean, at one point I thought Santoni had it. I couldn't believe it. Like, when I thought Tyson was going to lose, I was like, this is how Chappies wins. That's what I thought,
Yeah, or how Karan wins. I was almost thinking, if Tyson goes out,
Yeah.
Karan takes the game. But, a really tight battle. And we saw, Tyson really had to claw it back. But in the end, just blowing Santani out of the water, coming up with that fire and, sending Santani home. Santani had the majority of the votes, which would have counted against her, but she had that second chance, which I like with this fire idol twist. It does allow those people to go head to head and really fight for their place in the game. And I'd imagine we're not getting a Final Four fire making challenge in this season of Survivor South Africa. So it is kind of nice having that sort of at this stage of the game, and almost having it being played by choice as opposed to being by proxy. A real shame to see Santani go out. I hate looking in retrospect, but I really think the last tribal council when Wider went home, Chappies made the wrong decision in sending Anella back to camp. I really think he should have sent Santani back to camp, save Santani's idol. And, the vote really was going against Wider. So I think Wider would have gone home no matter what, and it could have been played for Santani. But I mean, in the game of Survivor, you play by each day. It's a day-by-day game. So look, we can't go back in retrospect and look at it that way. But, Santani has played a great game. She's always been playing the middle throughout. Been a little bit aggressive at times, but I think had she got to the end, she would have had a really strong case to win. So it's a shame seeing her go home out here.
Have a look at Santini's interview that's going to be available in 24 hours' time, because I asked her the question about the tribal council pass and what the conversation were between herself and Chappies. So you kind of put that Chappies made a mistake there. I don't want to give away what Santini said, but there's more to the story in regards to why that tribal council pass wasn't played on her in the previous round of gameplay. So have a look at that when that comes out. It was probably one of the most fun exit interviews I've had so far, because I just loved talking to Santini. She's just such a great person and such a great player this season. And she's going to be memorable. She's going to be one of those people that we'll talk about in Survivor South African lore for a very long time in the future. I really, really have enjoyed seeing her play her scramble. Like, I think I even said to her in the interview, you played the type of game that I would have loved to be able to play if I was to go out there. Like, every fan dreams that they could play a game like yours, and you should be proud of how far you got. You nearly won the whole thing, even with myself and Riley completely underestimating you and picking you so low in our draft picks, which she had a bit of a laugh about and didn't mind that at all. And I said to her, brilliant on you. What a game. What a game. And then she goes to Ponderosa, Riley. And, in the Ponderosa video, we find out that a lot of people would have voted for her in the end. Like, people are saying that, Santini played the best game up until this point. She was the person that they had to take out. I think she was the front runner to win the show. I think the only thing that would have made people not vote for her in the end is if she didn't own up to her game, because that's kind of what Kiran was getting out when he was pointing out some of the hypocrisy and the fact that she has also flipped back and forth and lied to them. I think if she tried to defend herself at the end, and if she didn't own up to it, she could have still lost. But I think if she could have done that one thing, she probably had the most impressive game. Nobody gave her a shot to get this far in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And she did play a great game all along. It almost is similar to Sandra's game in Survivor Game Changers, where, she's always playing the anyone but me game, but being a little bit more aggressive with it. And I think, Santini really did what Teresa couldn't. She played that sort of Sandra or Sari game, but playing a little more aggressive. And I think we've said this in the past. Had she got to Tribal Council, there was always the question whether the jury would be bitter and whether she owns up to her game. But I mean, she's played such a strong game throughout the season that had she owned up to it, I do think she would have been able to beat a Tyson or a Karan, just because, despite not having an alliance with anyone but Chappies throughout the game, she came from the bottom. She was underestimated from day one, being sent to Immunity Island twice, getting those advantages in her pocket, which ultimately, propelled her into a position where she could work with Chappies, who really at the time viewed her as a goat that could be dragged along. And, they did work in lockstep throughout the season, but Santini had just as much control in that alliance as Chappies did. And at many times throughout, she was the deciding vote. So a shame to see her go, and I hope we see her back in the future, because she had a great shot at winning. I'm not sure if she can replicate that in another season. People might look at her as a bit too much of a threat, but always great seeing Santini on our screens. And I really regret that we got to see her go.
I can also say that Santini would be back out there as soon as they ask her to go and play the game. I think she had a blast when she played it. So I do think there's a very high likelihood we do see her come back for a future All-Star, South African All-Star season. Another thing I just wanted to sort of talk about here prior to going into the player rankings is, we've been hard on Tyson, or a lot of fans have been hard on Tyson because of him being pretty aggressive this season or the last couple of episodes, and maybe being a little bit of a robot at times. We haven't seen a lot of emotions from him and things like that. But how cool was it? Like, Chappie says, with the family visit and everybody coming out there, you get to see people outside of them being this person in the game that you need to get past to win the money at the end. You get to see them as human beings, and he gets his best friend coming out there to, see him on the island, and it's a different Tyson. Like, the smile the guy has, he's talking to us in a confessional and he's saying, like, I just feel so much positivity having my friend here, someone I can trust. And, he's got the biggest smile that I've seen on any of his confessionals, because normally he does look upset, when he talks to the camera. It's like he's angry at the cameraman as well. He just has that, I think he's got a bit of an introverted personality, but seeing his friend, seeing someone he really cares for outside of the game, we did see a different person here. And I think for people who are quite sort of low on Tyson, just remember that he is also like one of us. He's just someone that got to play the game. He's a human being. He's got family and friends outside of the game. And I think he's a great guy outside of the game. I've seen some of he's been really kind to this podcast. He's tweeted us, he's retweeted at us, he's been engaging with the fandom and things like that as well. So I think he's a nice guy. Don't hold what happens on the island against him with everything that's going on. It's kind of what I want to leave you guys with. And having any form of online bullying is never right anyways. And also looking at it, it's an edited show. We get to see very small snippets of what happens out there on the island. But I really enjoyed seeing Tyson interact with someone from home and seeing that other side of him as well.
Yeah, that's right. And the family visit always puts the game on hold. So it's nice to see those personalities coming out. And it did remind me of Tyson from Winners at War, how we saw Tyson almost act as the dad in the game as opposed to the goof outside of the family visit. So really fun to see. And I suppose that brings us into our power rankings for this week. We did mention that Tyson did get a little bit of a negative edit here in this episode, but I didn't mind it here. I do think that he still has a chance to win. Again, I'm in three minds really between Tyson, Karan, and Chappies. I want Karan to win. I want Tyson to win, both because they're both on my draft team, and a Nicole win as well could be great for me, although I'd view that as less likely. But at this stage, I'm thinking Tyson is probably the clear front runner, simply because, again, Chappies has always been the underdog. There's so much running against him. And with Karan, I think he's been exposed for being this overarching strategic player, someone that's really driving the vote. So I think that might come to catch him. Hopefully not, because as I said, I do hope Karan goes far in the game, but it seems like the game is starting to work against him, especially after Anela really blew up his game in this last episode.
100%. So guys, if you've got any last minute questions here as we get to the end of the show, post it at us now and we'll get to them as quickly as we can. If there's anything we didn't touch upon on this episode or you want to ask us some questions, let us know as I go through my power rankings here. I still have very much at this point Tyson as the number one person that I think is going to win this game. I really seeing a little bit of this negativity or him being annoyed by Chappies, it hasn't thrown me off. I do admit normally you don't see, like, they try, especially in the US, to paint the winners only in a positive light when they win the game. But in Survivor South Africa, the edit is sometimes different. I do feel like we see them as full human beings. You see people sometimes being right, and you also see them sometimes being wrong, but you get a more clearer picture of actually what happened out there on the island compared to any of the US seasons. So I still think potentially he's winning the show. I think that based on the edit, I have to say Chappies is my number two, even though, and I have to try and back one of my two guys still in the game. And Nella tanked his game here. So I've really got only one horse in the game still here towards the end. And Chappies is that person. If he can win out till the end and equal the record for most immunity wins in a season, because he's won 3. So if he wins 2 more, he will be equaling that record for most immunity wins in a Survivor South Africa season, and also equaling the international record for most immunities in a single season here. He could still go to the end, and that alone might be impressive enough because of the fact they've tried to get him out for so long, and they let the shark into the fish den. There might be guts all over the floor, and he might get to the end, and he might actually still win this show as well. So he will be my number 2 at this point. And then my number 3 is going to be Karan, because if Karan, like, his pre-merge edit wasn't great. Like, I just felt like they gave a lot of the credit to Tyson, and I'm sure these guys worked very closely together. But I feel like Karan, in my opinion, and it's no disrespect to anybody else this season that has played the game, I just think he's a superb player of this game. I actually think that the edit is now only showing us the type of player he is and probably was from the beginning, but we didn't get a lot of that in the beginning. So I think he's probably the front runner and probably has played the best game by a hair's whisker, probably between him and Tyson. I would give it to him just based on the social game that he also has, where I feel like he's excelling at the social game a bit more. Everybody thinks that he's their friend. Chappies and Santuni thought they could work with him. Chappies thought that Karan was in his alliance. He actually said, Karan is one of my alliance members, to his wife. So just shows you. Actually, I think it might have been Anela that he said was one of his. But I also know that Chappies had a really good sort of relationship with Karan throughout the season. The 2 people here that we're not mentioning, obviously, is Nicole and Anela. So my predictions, like I said, I think it's going to go down this way. I think next episode, we lose Karan. I think they're going to take him out of the board. I think Chappies could potentially even win the next immunity challenge, forcing the hand of Nicole and Anela to vote for either one of these 2. And they're going to look at Karan as the biggest threat out of the 2, because Anela already respects Karan as a game player. He told us that much this episode. And I think the episode after that, Chappies probably loses, like Logan said, doesn't get the immunity challenge, and they finally vote this guy out, because how can you let someone that have won 4 immunities in a row get into the finale? And then we sit there with Tyson and Nella and Nicole in the finale, and I think Tyson will be the sole survivor of Survivor South Africa Immunity Island. And I won't be upset at it, because I feel like if one of these two guys make the finale for the dominance they've had on the game from day one, they probably deserve a win. Like, I would be really happy for Chappies if he wins, because I like Chappies, but I also have to give credit where it's due.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very much in the same mindset as you. I do think that Tyson and Nicole will be the final 3. Nicole and Nella really having no agency at this point. And it's funny that, Zamba got dominated at the start. Vuna were really winning all the challenges. And then after the swap, Zamba came back, got the majority, headed into the merge. And now Vuna have completely flipped it again. And Vuna are back in the majority with Tyson, Kiran, and Chappies. So it will be interesting to see what goes on forward. But yeah, I'm in 2 minds: Tyson or Chappies, or Kiran for that end. They will have the edit. My concern with Tyson is his negative edit this episode, but we don't really know what happens with Survivor South Africa editing. We've seen some shocking things happen in the past, such as the winner of season 6. So who really knows? And to Logan's question, I believe Immunity Island is now out of play. No more idols able to be played, no more advantages able to come into play. So from here on out, it's just going to be every man for themselves, fighting until the end. And the only safety they can have that is assured is winning that individual immunity necklace. And I think they're all going to need it.
Yeah, I agree. And Devin here says, remember Nick from season 37 getting a negative edit after getting blindsided when Davey got voted out, and he still won in the end. I do agree with that. I don't think the last 2 episodes, personally, I really don't think it takes Tyson. I mean, I'm willing to put another friendly wager on it, because it looks like, Riley, you and me, you might not want to take me on it because Tyson's actually your guy, but I'm that confident that I would put a 6-pack of beers on this.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. I think Tyson is 100% winning, and it's been fairly clear since, before the merge, really. But yeah, I do have question marks over it, but it does seem like it's the likely thing. And the only way that can happen is if Chappies continues to win immunity challenges.
Yeah, 100%. Also here, Harry, still with us until the end, being the mathematician that he is, asks us here to do a little bit of math here. Riley, we've got, is it a final 3 with 9 jury members, or a final 2 with 10 jury members, which could be a tie? I think that kind of puts it out there. There's no way that the producers would want to be in any kind of scenario where it potentially could be a tie. So I would personally go with a final 3.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a final 3. I think this episode was episode 13. So next episode, being episode 14, would be, the final 5. One person goes home. I suppose it would be the final 4 in the finale. Maybe I'm doing my maths wrong, or the final 3 in the finale. I don't know. We'll wait and see what happens. Harry, you're trying to catch me out of my maths. I'm not in that mindset right now. It's a Saturday for me, so I'm just trying to relax and rewind. But yeah, we just got to wait and see what happens.
Harry, send him some homework, let him do some math over the weekends. I love it. So that's really the end of the podcast here today, talking about this episode. It was a great episode. It's been a great season. I've really enjoyed it. And I think when it comes to Harry, give us a little smiley face there. Love the keeping us on our toes here, Harry. Love the live crowd that we had today. It's been great. A lot of people from the US being able to jump on live here and have some, interactions with you guys in regards to what's been happening this season in Survivor South Africa. It's been great to be able to communicate with you guys. And, just throughout this whole season, it's been a lot of fun. We're continuing to evolve what we do here. So we, if you want to jump on and give us some feedback and want to be a part of the community, the Survivor Worldwide community that we're building here on Reality Pop, we will be putting a link for our Discord channel into the description of this video after the live. I might have to update it because I think the Discord links expire after a certain amount of time. But join our Discord server where you can continue to ask us more questions and talk about the things that you'd love to see on the show moving forward. Give us suggestions on what's working, what's not working, or just have a chat with us. We've had an opportunity to jump on a voice call with a couple of fans in the past and just talk Survivor, because at the end of the day, we're all big fans and we love communicating and talking to other fans of the show as well. Riley, what do you have coming up for Snuffed, the other channel that you're involved in?
Yeah, so just this morning, I asked the what if question. Well, what if Jeff Probst retired from Survivor? Who would replace him? And, Nico Panagio was someone I considered there. So if you haven't already, go over to Snuffed and check that out. A couple of international Survivors hosts I mentioned there. And, I do hope that we see one of these, either JLP or Nico, take the reins if Jeff ever retires. Other than that, looking forward to Survivor 41. I'll have plenty of content going on over there in the lead up to the season, analyzing the cast, doing everything ahead of the season. And also, rewinding Australian Survivor and Survivor South Africa once those seasons eventually come to an end. So there's plenty to look forward to, plenty of Survivor content to discuss. It really is, we're getting close to the end of Australian Survivor and Survivor South Africa at this point, but we're getting ever so close to US Survivor returning as well. So we're
Really
going
excited.
to be Survivored out by Christmas.
100%. And also, if Colby Donaldson is not on your list, we will riot against you, because I think he should be in the list for hosting.
You just have to watch.
Great. Because I know probably be 50-50. I know a lot of people on Reality Pop really wants Boston Rob to take over. I don't see Boston Rob as a host of Survivor personally. I like him as a player. I mean, he's got a very heavy Boston accent, for people watching it internationally. I don't know how that would go when you have him actually hosting the show. But Colby Donaldson, I'm there for that as well if it's a former player. But my preference would be that we don't have a former player host the show, and that we actually, I don't know if it needs to be one of the international hosts, but I would much prefer we have a proper host the show if that day ever comes. But who are we fooling? Jeff Probst is going to be there forever. He'll be rolling around in his wheelchair when he's in his 80s, and he'll still host the show.
He's going to die, and then it'll be Weekend at Bernie's towards the end there, if he keeps going. But Jeff Probst has been around for so long. Sometimes, maybe something will happen, but hopefully Jeff Probst continues into the future.
Yeah, 100%. Logan, thanks for dropping in, and we'll see you next time. So what's happening on Reality Pop next is I just did a challenge recast for a recap an hour ago with Chantel Francis and Angel Cake. We're doing our challenge recap 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time each Friday in the US. So have a look out for that. I'm also the one of the co-hosts on that one. And then we'll be back with Survivor Worldwide next weekend to talk about Survivor South Africa episode 14. And prior to that, we'll also be doing next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. We'll be doing the recap for the next week of episodes for Australian, Brains versus Brawns. It's getting down to the pointy end. We're very close to the end of both of these seasons. And as always, have a look out for that exit interview that will be dropping tomorrow, and have a look at what Santoni had to say about her time out on the game. Like I said, it was one of the exit interviews that I had the most fun with when I did it as well. All right. So that's it, really, guys. Thanks for jumping in and being here with us today, and we will catch you next time. Goodbye.